prominent players who've committed suicide, Junior Seau being one of them.
The stuff that they have to do and the stuff that they've seen on their operations is just, their brains are probably on fire.
What ended up leading you to go to college and kind of get a higher education?
I wanted to do brain. And so I matched into a neurosurgery residency. For the better part of 10 years, I was doing neurosurgery training. And during that time is where I came up with the idea for TriNeuro.
A lot of pushback online, and I don't know how to answer these guys. How is that when you feel the difference when you take them?
It's going to degenerate. All our joints are going to degenerate, just like the brain. Your brain is going to degenerate. So you need to sort of protect everything that is in TriNeuro has been tested not only in animals, but also in humans, and has had good clinical results.
A lot of the viewers are veterans and law enforcement. And so I know all those guys go through very similar when it comes to their brain health, and their back health. And so we're providing value for them. So I think this podcast is going to be just as valuable as any other person we've ever invited. So thank you for your time for it.
Welcome to the VinnyRoc podcast.
I took the blows and did it my way.
It's time. The VinnyRoc podcast.
I'm from Texas, grew up in a border town, El Paso. My dad was actually a Mexican citizen and then came over with my grandma. My grandpa was an American. He was born on a reservation, an Apache reservation in Arizona. And then from my mom's side, my mom is Puerto Rican. Her family came over from Puerto Rico to El Paso, and my parents met in El Paso. So I grew up in a border town. I know what it's like. Pretty crazy. Actually, my older brother got shot in Juarez, Mexico, back in the 90s. His friend had to rush him across the border so that he wouldn't get into a Mexican hospital. They wanted him over in the U.S. So they rushed him across the border. I've had a lot of experience with the border, and it's changed a lot, over the last 30 years. But anyway, I digress.
I had no idea. I'm going to cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
I had no idea you were from El Paso, but I also had no idea you were half Puerto Rican, half Mexican.
Yep.
So my mother's from Canutillo.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. That's right down the road from El Paso. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So she's from Canutillo. My grandfather's buried there. My grandmother, my uncle, in a little town. And I spent most of my, childhood coming up for the summers and for either Christmas or New Year's. And so that's funny. I spent my time in Juarez too as an 18-year-old kid, a knucklehead going over there,
Yep.
And
we all did, cross the border, go drink, come across the other way. And back then it was pretty safe.
It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal.
You you parked on the U.S. side, you walked across the bridge, you partied, you come back. And everybody felt pretty safe at the time. And now it's obviously a little more crazy, but
it's definitely a little different. And then the other thing you probably don't know is that I'm half Mexican, half Puerto Rican as well.
No way. So the Puerto Ricans on your dad's side.
Yeah. My father was born in the Bronx, but his whole family's from the island.
Nice. That's crazy.
yeah, that's why I just tripped out when you're saying that. Like, what? Man, we haven't had time to talk enough to put that together, but that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So from El Paso, what ended up leading you to go to college and kind of get a higher education?
My father was, I think probably my father was the first one in his generation of Figueroas to go to college. So he went to UTEP. And he graduated from UTEP with a degree in education. He wanted to be a physician growing up. He worked for an orthopedic surgeon in El Paso, and he was ended up being the X-ray tech for the guy who took all the X-rays. And the guy was Hispanic, and he had actually gone to medical school in Spain. So he was willing to go send my dad to medical school. He said, I'll pay for it. You just come back and we'll work together and we'll, get this practice going. And my dad ended up having my older brother and older sister. And so he didn't want to leave and go do more schooling. So he just ended up getting a degree in education, forwent or just delayed or ended up not going to medical school. And, but he always had that passion in him for medicine. And so when I was growing up, he sort of guided me down that path. And I remember I was in Boy Scouts, and one of the fathers of the Boy Scouts that I was with was a neurosurgeon in the Army, and the Army base there in El Paso is Fort Bliss.
Yep.
So one random Saturday, I remember going to the military hospital there, and I watched an awake surgery for a brain tumor. So they had this guy, his head, like the skull was off, and they were looking at the tumor, and it was in an area that controlled language of the brain. So they wanted to make sure that as they were taking it out, they weren't messing up his language skills. So they had him like talking and repeating things, and it was pretty crazy. So I was like, I want to do that.
How old were you?
So yeah, I was like, I got to do this. And so
How old were you when you did that?
I was about 10 years old ish.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about those surgeries, and I've also watched some on YouTube. There's one of a person playing a violin for the same kind of reason. Yeah.
Yep. They don't do it too often anymore. It's kind of going on the wayside because we have a lot of good functional capability to map the brain, and we don't necessarily need them to be awake anymore. But I wanted to do it, and so my older brother had gone to the Air Force Academy in Colorado. And I sort of followed his path. The Air Force said that you could be they would send you to medical school. And my family not having a lot of money, my father was a high school teacher. He taught chemistry and physics. And so I went where it was the easiest on my family. So I applied, ended up going to the Air Force Academy, did biochemistry, sort of pre-med degree, and graduated from the Air Force. But at the time, they were not letting people go directly into medical school. They wanted you to do active duty first. And then after you finished your obligation, then you could go to medical school or law school or whatever you wanted to do. But so I did active duty, and I was a scientist and an engineer. I did some satellite engineering because we have such a broad course curriculum at the academy. But when I completed my obligation, I was a scientist. I was working on bioterrorism, counter warfare stuff. So I would be deployed usually for about 2 weeks with different ranger groups, and I would take samples at various warehouses or facilities, bring them back to our lab in San Antonio, where we had a level 4 lab, which is the highest lab, and look for things like anthrax, ricin, stuff like that.
Right.
And we also developed a like an in the field therapy for ricin, which it would help the person get back to a hospital, and once they got back to the hospital, they could be treated appropriately. So they wouldn't necessarily be like cured in the field, but it would allow them to live longer.
Ricin was that it's like a powder form kind of poison or something, right?
Yeah. It's a powder.
I remember hearing a little bit about it in the military.
Yeah. It's not as bad as anthrax, but yeah, it's not a bacteria, it's not a virus. It's just a powder form that would get into your lungs and cause cellular damage. You could end up essentially drowning from all the fluid in your lungs. But anyway, so that's what I did. And then I had the option to either stay in the Air Force and go into medicine or get out and go do it on my own. I opted to get out and go to medical school because at the time they were contracting out neurosurgery jobs. Like if you wanted to be a neurosurgeon, you didn't necessarily, it was very hard to do it through the military because once they went to medical school, they wanted you to be like a flight doc for a little while. And then they could maybe send you to do a neurosurgery residency. It was very competitive. But so I opted to get out of the military, and I got a MD PhD scholarship to the University of Texas at Houston. So I came to Houston, did my my medical school and my graduate school at the same time. And I graduated in 7 years with an MD and a PhD degree. And my PhD was in biological, essentially, I did cancer research, but it was in biological science. So I wanted to do brain. And so I matched into a neurosurgery residency. And for the better part of 10 years, I was doing neurosurgery training. And during that time is where I came up with the idea for TriNeuro.
Supplements, so you guys can see. Very excited about taking these. These are going to be, keep those for the studio. Either way, we're going to check these out right now. So while Prime is sending us these drinks, we'll show them some love. Either way. TriNeuro, dude, is created by a brain doctor who legitimately is doing a lot of case studies right now. And I'm really excited about this product because if you're a veteran, if you're a law enforcement officer, if you're just someone who has had some potential traumatic brain injuries, if you're someone who's looking to kind of heal the brain, if you're someone who's just looking for something that's more than a nootropic, something that can kind of support brain health, well, then there you have it. And then the new supplement that I have right here, right, this spine one, to me, sounds awesome. I'm someone who's struggled with back issues for a long time. Come on, get off me. Either way, down the hatch. That's also pretty good. Either way, you guys go check out TriNeuro Supplements. You can check them out on Instagram, TriNeuroSupplements.com. Go check them out. If you guys have any questions, hit me up. A lot of people have been asking me about these. I highly recommend them. I think they're outstanding and an outstanding company who, to be honest, created by a dude who knows the job, knows his job is brains. And so why not?
TriNeuro. I was in Miami doing a crazy trauma fellowship. Miami has some trauma that you don't usually see in the U.S., like machetes to the head. Miami is, parts of Miami are not, doesn't seem like you're in America. You seem like you're in the capital of South America. A lot of Venezuelan, Colombian, Cuban populations. When you're in the hospital, you might speak English like here and there, but you are speaking Spanish almost the whole time. So it feels like you're not in America, but there's some crazy traumas that we get in, boating accidents, jet skis, like I said, machetes to the head, weird stuff. But during that trauma fellowship, there was patients that would come back, and when they would follow up with us, they would say that they were not quite back to their level of cognition that they were before they had their head injury. And this was about like the 3 to 6 month mark. And I would usually say, diet, exercise, get out more, challenge your brain. That was my go-to answer. But a lot of them just needed a little extra boost. And so they were telling me about things they were taking. And at the time, Alpha Brain was coming up big. Neuriva had been around for a while. Prevagen had been around for a while. Those were like the big names in this nootropic realm. And so I did my sort of due diligence, and I was researching all the peer-reviewed studies online. And there was a lot of ingredients in those supplements that had been tested in like things like mice or rats, but they hadn't been tested in humans. So I wanted to sort of develop a formulary or a list of stuff for them to take that was actually studied in human trials and not just focused on cognition, but also focused on brain recovery from a head injury or just from like getting old. So I developed this list of 10 or 11 things, and I would give them to the patients, and they would go and try to find them on the online or in a supplement store. And a lot of them couldn't find all the stuff, or they weren't willing to find all the stuff because there's a lot of legwork. So, but for those that ended up trying a lot of the things, I was getting very good feedback from. And so this about 2 years ago, I just decided just to make the supplement myself, make it easy, put everything into one capsule, and just try to sell it that way. And so that's where sort of TriNeuro came about. And the name TriNeuro is sort of focused on 3 different things. One of them is cognition, like every other nootropic on the market. But the other 2 are things that no other nootropic on the market has. And that's antioxidants for the brain that help recover from damage. So when you have a brain injury, you have, just like any other part of the body, you have a very rapid immune response to that area because the body wants to protect that area. But that immune response isn't necessarily good. There's good parts of it and there's bad parts of it. The bad parts of it are that you have a lot of inflammatory, what we call cytokines, and you have responses to those cytokines in the brain that can form like scarring. So if you get a gash on your arm, it's not going to heal over like perfect skin. You're going to have a scar, right?
Yeah.
That's, I guess, in the brain, that would be like the negative response. You don't want scarring in the brain because that inhibits reconnection of neurons, connections from one cell to the other. And then if you develop enough scars, enough micro scars throughout the years, you can start inhibiting the the communication between certain parts of the brain. So that is what the other 2 groups of ingredients for TriNeuro are, the other 2 arms of TriNeuro. One is an antioxidant to sort of scavenge for these free radicals that can damage DNA and kill cells. And the other is sort of to regulate the immune response so that you have a more balanced immune response and you don't have too high a level of the negative immune response in the brain after you get like a TBI or a concussion. So that's the 3-pronged approach to TriNeuro. And like I said, there's really nothing on the market that addresses any of that stuff. It's all purely cognition.
Another sponsor of ours, Core Medical Group. Coming up, I'm going to be going to the Core Medical Veterans Appreciation weekend. I'm just going to go there to support. I believe they bought some of my books, so we'll be signing those for anyone who's there. Oh, I'll probably be speaking on a new subject that I'm going to be talking about. By the way, Modern Gun School. You guys already know who they are. If you guys are looking to use your GI Bill, use your Voc Rehab on something that is productive for yourself. If you like to build guns, if you want to learn how to build guns, you could be an armor at the comfort of your own home. Incredible company. Several people that we've sent there through this program, through the VinnyRoc podcast, has given us just nothing but the praise of the organization and how they run it, but as well as the information that they receive. So if you guys go check out Modern Gun School on Instagram, they might have changed it, but MGS Trade School is what is on Instagram, but moderngunschool.com. Go hit them up.
Veterans, the crazy part about it is that, when I got out of the military, I was having kind of a stutter issue, speech issue. And we never even noticed it until I got out. And then I lost about 18 different debit cards a year. Car keys were losing left and right. And so we finally, when we went to the VA, they did a CAT scan for a TBI, and they identified I had a TBI. And the hardest thing for me to hear that was that, like, how? I never got blown up by the enemy. Like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
And they were talking about just consistent overpressure poisoning or overpressure, being near explosions so often, in Ranger Battalion. I was a Gustav gunner when I first got there. I was on a Gustav team. There was a day we fired something like 60 rounds in a day, and that's supposed to be like, you're not supposed to even do that. I was around a bunch of breaches. We used to eat our own charges in the sense. And so like all these things compiled created, a TBI that I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I was a little upset at myself, and I was a little upset at kind of the military for almost allowing that to happen or not knowing what we were doing to ourselves, And so I started trying to figure out what to do with the brain treatment. We actually did speech therapy for a little bit and different things to try and help. And then just recently I went to the TBI clinic here. And so when I saw, what you had here, I was like, man, I'm very interested in it. The funny thing is that I get a lot of pushback online, and I'm not sure, and I don't know how to answer these guys. Some people say like, there's studies that prove that nootropics don't necessarily work. I'm like, well, how is that when you feel the difference when you take them? I mean, how do I answer those questions for some of these people that want to, there's a bunch of haters online, right?
It's not going to work for everybody, right? So it's not, like some people can drink a cup of coffee and go right to sleep. That's just part of their genetics or epigenetics, and they just don't respond to coffee.
Yeah, it's my wife. My wife does that.
Yeah, which is the most widely used stimulant in the world. So obviously not everybody's going to respond to TriNeuro, and the only way, or to nootropics in general, and the only way is to try it out. And we have, a sort of money back guarantee that if you don't like it, you don't feel anything, just send it back. We'll give you your money. That's fine. No harm, no foul. But they're right in a way, in a sense that there are no studies. Sorry, there are really only 2 studies that are peer reviewed, that are what we call very sound, very strong studies, because they are randomized, clinically controlled, placebo studies. And the only 2 that have that are Neuriva and Alpha-Brain. But when you look at the title of these peer-reviewed studies, you're like, wow, this sounds really legit. But then when you start digging in and you start reading the actual long study, what they did was they had a cognitive assessment in patients. And some patients were given the supplement, some patients were given placebo. And they were given these cognitive assessments. At the beginning of the cognitive assessment, they will tell you 5 things. They will tell you like a pen, a watch, a painting. And they said, remember those 5 things. And then they take their cognitive assessment and they, fill out all their stuff. And a lot of it is to do with memory and language, spatial reasoning, things like that. And then at the end, they say, okay, repeat those 5 things to me. In those studies, everybody got those 5 things correct, regardless of whether they took the placebo or whether they took the actual supplement. The only difference was that people who took the supplement, they were recording that they were able to repeat those 5 things faster, right? So they were like, oh, well, let me tell you those 5 things. Whereas people who didn't take the supplement, I guess they had to think a little bit longer, but they were able to get those 5 things right. Yeah. So with those studies, they were able to say that they sort of helped memory. So in a way, there's not really good data showing that it helps, other than people's anecdotal experience with TriNeuro. So that's, me being a physician and a scientist, I wanted to sort of change that, especially for nootropics. So that's why you had mentioned the brain clinic there in Dallas, Resiliency Brain Clinic. We have partnered with them to do a randomized clinical controlled, placebo controlled study. We're enrolling 50 patients. Some will get the supplements, some will get a placebo. The bottle looks the same. The pill looks the same. And we are doing it out through 100 days and looking at people's cognitive assessments, actually like a written cognitive assessment afterwards. And seeing if there's any change in a lot of different things. Memory, spatial reasoning, they're going to be taking different tests throughout the process. And, hopefully we'll find something good out of that, other than, just those sort of small little memory changes that Alpha Brain and Neuriva have. But we've had some military people who have tried Alpha Brain, who have tried Neuriva, who have tried these other products, and they say they don't really feel anything, but with TriNeuro, they actually have a good response. So I feel, based on the good response that I'm getting from all the patients that I've given to in the past and a lot of the military people that are taking it now, I feel like we're going to get some good data out of that. But that's not the only thing that we are looking at. We're also partnering with a brain health clinic here in Houston that they specialize in doing EEGs, so electroencephalography, and they look at all portions of the brain, but specifically they'll be looking at the frontal lobe in the brain and the changes in the frontal lobe if you are taking the placebo or if you take the supplement. And so we'll hopefully have some more data as to actually what the firing of the neurons looks like while you're taking TriNeuro and while you're doing a specific task.
And you're pretty confident with one being a scientist, but two, putting together all the right supplements that this genuinely will help people's brains.
Yeah, I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to pick things that had actually been tested in humans. So everything that is in TriNeuro has been tested not only in animals, but also in humans, and has had good clinical results. The combination of ingredients itself has not been tested, which is what we are doing currently. But everything that's in there has peer-reviewed research that seems to be helping people, and that's why it has been chosen to be in TriNeuro.
And talk to me about the spine one. So that's one that was new. When you said it to me, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
So I got excited about it because I've had some back issues from same military back injury.
I growing up playing sports, I had a lot of head injuries, and then also from the military, but it's also wreaks havoc on your back and every other joint in your body. So I have a torn ACL, or I had a torn ACL, had a couple knee surgeries on my left knee, and then just, sort of annoying lower back issues for, since college. And, I'm almost 44 now. But the spine sort of came out because I do brain surgery and I do spine surgery. And I had a lot of patients that were taking these joint supplements, which had a lot of things like chondroitin. There's different things that are there for the synovial fluid in joints, but also the articular cartilage that is at the, on each bony surface of a joint. So I would, did my due diligence also and did my research, and a lot of them had stuff to sort of lubricate the joint, but they didn't have anything in there to sort of relieve pain. They didn't have anything in there to sort of like TriNeuro to sort of regulate the immune response, because a bad joint doesn't just need lubrication, but it also needs you to sort of help regulate the frequency and how rapid the joint is going to degenerate. It's going to degenerate. All our joints are going to degenerate, just like the brain. Your brain is going to degenerate, so you need to sort of protect it. And that's what TriNeuro Spine was sort of aimed to do. One, to sort of alleviate the pain. That's the big one that you have in your back and other joints. It helps for my knee as well, but also to to help the articular cartilage break down not as fast. Again, by regulating the immune response, not having too negative of an immune response, and then stuff to sort of help lubricate the joint and make that synovial fluid more efficient. So that's where it came out. And again, we've had some good responses from people who have not only had joint pain, but also nerve pain. And
really?
Like a radiculopathy nerve pain, either from compression of the nerve or just irritation of the nerve. The stuff that's in TriNeuro Spine that regulates the immune response, the inflammation, has helped with their nerve pain, even though they might not have specifically joint pain. So that was unexpected for me because I was aiming just at joint pain. But we're starting to partner with chiropractors here in Houston, specifically like a sports chiropractor.
Yeah.
To to get some data and try to see if it's helping people with their level of pain on their subsequent visits to their chiropractor compared to placebo, as well as their mobility. Because they do very objective tests of your joint range of motion and the level of pain that you have during that range of motion. So there is some data that we can get from that as well that we're trying to acquire.
But Everest is a trading post, is a kind of community of outdoorsmen. If you're someone who likes to go to the outdoors, if you're someone who likes to hunt, camp, fish, even those who are in kind of the survival space, it's a trading post for all companies alike. It's somewhere that you can go to have a resource for all different locations and companies that sell anything in that range. So if you're an outdoorsman, if you're a hunter, camper, fisherman, just a hiker, it's a place where I think you'll enjoy. It kind of brings all those companies together in one platform. So go check out everest.com. You can find them on Instagram at Everest Trading Post. GMR Gold, Bouillon Box. Hey, I just got a new one in. Where is it? I just brought it up here. Oh, right here. Check this out. Boom. This is a Mountain Dew bottle cap. Pretty sweet. Kind of exciting to see that. On top of that, this is kind of cool. I was really excited about opening this right now. I just got these in the mail right now. Sweethearts. Some silver. I think the family will really enjoy this. This is something I'm going to give to either my daughter or my wife. I think it's pretty cool to see. It says my hero, bear hug, and soulmate. Really cool to join me as I crack this bad boy open. Where's my knife? Distinguished package. It comes with those two items right there. And then it comes with several other. Oh, shit. This is dope. I'm working on something really cool with GMR Gold that I'm excited about. Silver. A few other little silver bars and gold bits. And one cool thing here, you tell me this ain't Spider-Man. This is Spider-Man to me. I think this is Spider-Man. Either way. You guys can go get your Bouillon Box. It's a subscription-based model. You guys go check them out. Check out GMR Gold if you guys are just interested in buying, selling, or understanding the market, the value of gold and silver, precious metals. It's a trusted company. We really enjoy working with them. I've worked with them for many years, and so you guys can check them out.
During your career as like a brain surgeon, do you see things that you're like, okay, I need to take better care of myself, or I need to, or is there things in your career that has now kind of pivoted you to kind of live a different lifestyle?
Yes. So when you go into neurosurgery, you're very thankful that you don't have these things or these sort of genetic predispositions in your family for tumors or vascular problems in the brain, because those are pretty devastating. When I was doing my pediatric fellowship, you're also every day you go home and you just give your kid a hug, because there's kids in the hospital that know they're going to die from a brain tumor, and parents know that they're going to die from a brain tumor, and they are just counting down the months. So that definitely takes its toll on you, but you end up being very grateful at the end of the day. And of course, I have a lot of faith. I'm a religious person, so we pray every day, for keeping us healthy. Pray for our patients every day, me and my family. So it definitely changes your outlook on stuff, because those people are sort of relying on your education and your decision-making abilities to treat them appropriately. Now, sort of from an unexpected standpoint, neurosurgeons are very busy. Surgeons in general are very busy. We were working 80-hour weeks during residency and fellowship, and I missed a lot of my oldest daughter's life and her first year of life growing up. So I have actually stepped back from, as much as I can from like professional stuff to be more present with my family. Because I have a 4-year-old, 4.5-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and then a 9-month-old. So I have sort of stepped back a little bit to sort of be present for them and be involved, go see things that I missed with my daughter, like, recitals and swim lessons and gymnastics, ballet, sports. So that has been very rewarding to me because of the things that I have seen in the hospital. You never know when your kid's last day is going to be.
Yeah.
We have crazy traumas coming in. It's changed my life. Like we don't drive after like 9 p.m. We don't get on the road just because of stuff that I've seen,
Right.
kids coming into the trauma bay, and it just devastates your family. So things that I've seen in the hospital sort of translated to my life and it's affected what I'm now doing in my life. I don't know if that answers your question. But
Yeah. No, exactly. So it's funny because I'm the same. So like my career has always been chasing bad people. And so my kids go to bathrooms, I go with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I'll be out here. You know what I mean? Airports. I don't leave my kids alone anywhere because I know the bad people that I've chased my whole career. You know what I'm saying? And my kids don't spend the night at other people's houses because I just don't. I'm sorry, I might be that dad that just doesn't allow them to do anything, but that's okay. I feel I know things that has happened in the past in my world, and I'm not gonna and it's just how we are as people. And I know people in certain professions kind of do the same. That driving after 9 p.m. I've never thought of, but I imagine in your career, that's created some trauma of your own. And you're like, okay, yeah, we're good. We're not driving after 9 p.m.
I mean, and it's not that I'm a bad driver. It's the people that you have to look out for.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's exactly how it goes.
So, I mean, to sort of pivot off that, like I saw something on Instagram about this professional skier who was skiing on like a green slope, which is like the easiest slope, but she had her baby in like a backpack, and everybody was commenting. There was, comments one way or the other, but from like a surgeon standpoint, you might be the best skier in the world, but you have to watch out for that idiot behind you going 100 miles an hour down the slope and hitting you.
Yeah.
Right? The same for a car. If we're out at 10 p.m. and somebody doesn't see the stoplight and slams us from behind, I've seen kids come in essentially like decapitated, their spine and their skull decapitate, and that's like an instant, they're instantly dead because their head goes forward and they don't have enough muscular strength to keep their head on like an adult would.
Yeah.
So just stuff like that has
I see
molded what we do.
I see parents ride motorcycles with their kids, and again, I'm like, it's your business, not mine. But I've ridden motorcycles for many years. I don't buy them anymore because I've lost a lot of friends to it, and it's just kind of a promise to my wife. We're just taking a break.
Yeah.
But like, I put my kids on my motorcycle, and we do like little circles in a cul-de-sac. But even that made me intimidated. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm good. I won't do that.
Yeah.
I think of all the things of kids getting injured, like on the TBI concept. Like, I played football growing up, and I had no issues. I was a linebacker. I'd hit everybody, and I know I had a few head injuries, and it was just keep playing.
Yeah.
When my 14-year-old son now, when he was 11, he wanted to start playing tackle football. My wife's like, I don't think so. And I'm like, it's a hard one for me to say because I don't want to deprive my kid of playing sports.
Yep.
And as much as I love football, I do know the fear of it now. One hit can change everything. I've seen stories of kids who one hit has changed their life dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
And no different in boxing. I grew up boxing. My son wants to box, and I've seen in recent years a lot of good upcoming boxers take one hit wrong, and it changes their life forever.
Yep.
And so, like, I don't want to be the helicopter dad that doesn't allow my kids to experience life. But every time you see these things, and we're so experienced in life and see, it's like, man, I'm terrified. And so, fortunately enough, my son pivoted to wrestling, and he focuses on that. And there's very little head injuries in wrestling, but there's very little injuries that are life threatening in wrestling, which is great. And my daughter does soccer, so it's like, okay, they've chose sports that I am a little bit more comfortable with, right now at the moment, but. Yeah. As a neurosurgeon, is there sports that you're very intimidated for your kids to ever want to play?
Yeah, I struggle with that all the time. Me and my wife talk whether we would let our two boys play football. And it's hard because I had so much fun doing it, and we love watching it, and they love it. They love watching it. My son cheers. But I struggle with it. I don't know. The problem with things like football is that there has been so much emphasis on protecting the player. right? They have all these pads and fancy helmets and things like that, that it negates the basics, right? The knowledge of how to do like a formed tackle.
Yeah.
There's specific ways to tackle. Put your head on one side instead of the other to prevent neck injuries. Not tackle with the crown of your head, because that forces, obviously you hit with your head, you can have a lot of head trauma, but that also forces bad forces on your spine, especially specifically your neck. So I think the emphasis also needs to be put on teaching kids at a young age, in Little League, how to tackle.
Yeah.
And they need to have, pretty experienced coaches teach them how to tackle from a young age, so that they're not coming up through high school and college and tackling wrong and getting hurt.
Yeah, I coached youth football.
Yeah.
And Utah is very good about making sure that we only have a certain amount of full contact practices a season, as well as how we teach tackling, and as well as the penalties that are given for head-to-head contact.
Yep.
Which is really good, and man, I've seen kids get hit really good without the head-to-head contact, just a good tackle. You know what I mean? And so it's just every state has a different system on how they do that. And so some of those youth programs are a little far behind on trying to protect the kids.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed that when you're young, most of the younger kids, I'm talking 9, 10, 11, 12 is starting to get there. But those age groups, they don't have the speed and physique to really put hurt on someone. Mm-hmm. It's still like they're not the athletes that come to high school and that are monsters. And so they don't create the kinetic force that I feel is really a detriment to a head-to-head contact.
You're right.
But once you start seeing kids get 13 and they start having hormones and they start getting into those bodies where they're fucking missiles, you know what I mean? And that's when it gets like, my son played high school football this year, and he's not a big kid. And I'm like, he got killed on a kickoff, And I was like, whoa, bro, like you're scaring me,
Yeah.
And when you get to that age, they stop thinking about the perfect tackle. They start thinking about the highlight reels, these kids.
Exactly. And I think that's the other negative part, is that, when we were growing up, it's, if the kid didn't get up after the tackle, you get high fives all around. Like that was the goal, right? To tackle them so hard that they were sort of laying around, not getting up fast. And that the other team would have to call a timeout, right? So that is the other thing I think that needs to be, the emphasis needs to change, is not trying to get on a highlight reel, but making a good tackle.
Yeah.
I played football for the Air Force Academy for a little while, but then I also played rugby after I tore my ACL. And the rugby is like a gentleman's game. It's completely different.
I love rugby. I've played it.
Well, there you go. So, I loved my first rugby game. I came off on the sidelines and they had me a beer at halftime.
Yeah. You shoot the boot.
But after, you could have fought with the guy across from you, like go to blows during the game. But immediately after that game is over, you are cordial with each other. You go to a bar or a house party and you sing songs and you have a good time with each other. It's a super gentleman's game. They teach you how to tackle from the get-go. Everything's not really a highlight reel. It's about trying to win the game as a team and being a gentleman about it. You're not trying to hurt the other person. If you knock somebody down and they're writhing on the floor in pain, you go over and you offer like a hand to help them up.
Yeah.
That's not the way it is in American football. It's obviously a little different. But I struggle with letting my sons play football. I don't know if I want to. I'm going to put them in a lot of different things: baseball, soccer, football, golf, and see what they excel at, see what they love. It will be hard.
Mid 45. I just have one. Boom. Mid-45, this is your kratom. This is your, it's a derivative of a plant medicine. It can help with different things. This one tends to focus more on the opiate receptors. You know, I would caution anyone who's interested in looking into this, ask your medical provider first whether it is safe for you. This is something that is kind of new to the scene in my world, and so I want you guys to go look into this. But if you're someone who struggles with addiction, someone who struggles with kind of trying to fill that void with the opiates, this is something that I know for a fact has helped hundreds of people, thousands of people, if not. But as well as there are some side effects that you got to know and you should understand. There's some things about this that I'm still trying to understand. What we're trying to do is get the owner, one of the owners on here to really deep dive and to explain this. If not, I have a couple of content creators I've reached out to who are going to come explain the properties of mid-45, but as well as kratom and how it can help, how it could be a benefit to you. Like I said, ask with a medical provider first. Look into it, research, check it out. This is one of our sponsors. You guys can check the link on my bio.
It'd be hard.
It's tough as a father who has, like, you know, high school kids now, and that's the fun era of watching them play sports, right? That's where it gets really exciting. You know, my son, who he played football, he played baseball as well, but you know, I feel like any sport, something can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And any sport, you know, head injuries are head injuries. Just accidental head collisions could be bad. But like the football one was a tough one for us. And my wife was like super excited when my son stopped playing high school football. Yeah. Yeah. She's like, wrestling? Cool. Let's do it. You know? And it's hard because I always had that dream or that idea of watching my son on a Friday night football in Texas. In Texas, you know? So, you know, it's all good. But like now I have a 4-year-old who's a pretty good athlete, and I'm sitting here thinking like, man, we're going to go through this all over again. And I don't know what the answer is going to be. Yeah. Maybe by the time he's in high school, it's safer. I don't know. But
I don't know. We're still up in the air. I don't know, to be decided. But we'll just put him in a few things. You know, luckily, like you said, you know, in Little League, you're likely don't have the kinetic energy to cause much harm. But this is another area of research that, like you were saying, you build up a lot of little TBIs throughout the years, and sure, you know, maybe a large proportion of people just no effect, but you run that risk of by the time you're 40, after years of having, you know, let's say you played 10 years of football total. Throughout that time, you can get a lot of head injuries. And then if you go into the military, you can get a lot of little micro injuries that end up adding up in the end. So it's hard. You know, you always run the risk of doing it. And if they're going to do that in their adult life anyway, like, why do I want to start them getting little micro injuries and, you know, as they're a kid?
Yeah.
But luckily the child's brains are very plastic up until the point where they start puberty. A lot of them are able to sort of rewire their brain to do different tasks. So it's hard to say. It's because we've never done like a long-term TBI study like that. That just doesn't exist. And the fidelity of MRIs, like a very basic MRI that doesn't have like functional MRI capability, the fidelity of that is not nearly good enough to even detect like a mild TBI or a concussion. Those are all those are all diagnosed clinically based on, you know, looking at the eyes or looking at response to questions. So
yeah, my kids have gotten concussions before, and you know, for a doctor to really determine that if it's not a severe concussion, they're almost like, I think it's a mild concussion. Well, how do you know? Well, you know, the significance of how you explain the original injury. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a hard one for even a doctor to determine in an ER how serious the head injury is, unless you see, you know, those telltale signs of a massive head injury. If it's in between, it's like err on the side of caution. You know.
Yep.
You know. So, you know, what's funny is that I've watched a lot of documentaries on CTE, football players in CTE, but there's also a lot of fighters that are going through that. Is that something, the CTE conversation in your world, is that something you guys have learned about a little bit?
Yeah. There, you know, the people that were really involved in the CTE study, one of them, his name is Julian Bales, and he is a neurosurgeon. So thankfully, one of the people that we're big in that area are neurosurgeons. And I think every NFL team has a neurosurgeon on the sideline or like easily available that regularly sees patients either for head injury or for spine injury as well. But they evaluate them for concussions on the sidelines, and like you said, error on the side of caution. I don't think that exists for NHL. I could be wrong. They have a lot of kinetic energy, and a lot of NHL players have concussions, but it's not as at the forefront like NFL. MMA, boxing, they have physicians that are on the ringside, but they're not necessarily brain experts, and they can do a basic concussion exam and error on the side of caution, which is fine. But that is big in our world of neurotrauma, and neurotrauma doesn't only have neurosurgeons in it, but it also has neurologists, neurophysiologists, neuropsychologists, functional, neuro people, and neuro rehab people, which are huge, just like the neuro rehab people at Residency Brain Clinic. And so from the world of neurotrauma, that CTE is huge. There's a lot of funding going into CTE from the government, from different agencies, and it's big. But there, like I said, there hasn't been a long-term study on CTE, from a lot of micro injuries throughout someone's life. That study would be very hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I have like a theory. I mean, I've just watched a lot of the documentaries on TBI, and I remember my own story of just like being around explosions a lot and never really getting blown up by an enemy, but more so kind of stupid training. You know what I mean? Like, get closer to the blast. You got to feel it. Like dumb shit we did in the military. And, then if you look at what's happening currently in the veteran community sometimes, and we have a lot of struggles with veterans and suicide, I start to really wonder if there's a connection with CTE in veterans that causes suicide just as much as we have, the CTE situation with the NFL. There's been a number of prominent players who've committed suicide and saying that their brain feels like, and it's Junior Seau being one of them.
Yep.
And so I really believe there's something to the effect of if we studied some of our veterans' brains, we'd probably see, signs of CTE because of I don't think some people understand just the training alone we do. We expose ourselves to shooting guns every day, but not even that high-powered guns, so 50 cals, whatever it is.
Yep.
And then on top of that, being near explosions as often as possible. Just part of the training we do is sit there and, be close to the explosion and get in the door.
Yep.
I bet there's some kind of correlation to some of these situations that is CTE that we just haven't really kind of looked into.
Yeah, absolutely. The number one, I think, symptom of CTE is changes in your mood, right? So it can be as malignant as suicide thoughts, or it can be very subtle, like you maybe have a little bit of unhappiness, but throughout the day you're pretty good, or you're a little more agitated than you are, or little things sort of set you off. So there's a wide range of things that can come from CTE, right? A wide range of mood disturbances. And that's has to do with the whole frontal lobe and the sort of the middle part of the brain in the frontal lobe called the cingulate gyrus, which is responsible for mood. And your frontal lobe is responsible for your interactions with people, and your sort of inhibitions that you have. So that is definitely could be a connection, and it probably is. It's just very hard to study.
Yeah.
And the only way to really study it would be to do essentially these sort of functional MRIs, sort of high definition MRIs with very large magnets on every NFL player or everybody in the military in order to have a baseline. So this is your baseline going into the NFL, right? Like year one, rookie. This is your baseline MRI. And when you get out, whether it's at 2 years or whether it's at 15 years, you have like an exit MRI. And this is your MRI. Or you have an MRI every year. If you had an MRI of your brain every year, that would be more useful to us because then we have a lot of time points. And then, on the unfortunate side, if you do have people that develop CTE and do, kill themselves, then being able to do an autopsy on their brain and actually look, because that's really the only way you can diagnose CTE is, yes, you have clinical things that you see on an exam, you have an MRI, but you really need to look at their brain after they have passed and cut it into slices and look for certain protein markers that are indicative of damage, chronic damage, things like that. So it would be a very, like I said, long study, hard, expensive, but probably necessary.
Yeah, if you did say an active duty soldier 4 years, if he did a baseline MRI and he got out in 4 years, did another MRI, and you'd be able to see potentially significant changes if there was brain damage.
If there was brain damage and you use the right kind of MRI that had the right fidelity, you could potentially see changes. Yeah, 4 years is not a long time. It would be better if it was like a 20-year, but yeah. The more data, the better. So, especially if that person was, like you were doing, made to go near explosions and stuff, or firing high caliber rifles all the time, you could potentially see a lot of changes. Yeah.
Javier, I've fired thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds in 4 years. Like, it's crazy. I remember they drop off rounds and they just say fire them. And I've done 18-4s. I've done laws. I've done a lot of anti-tank explosions, which are massive explosions.
Yep.
And then later in my career, I started doing the breaching stuff. We're being close to breaches, and so it's. I just think in my 4 years, it's like in 3 tours, a lot of training. I was through a significant amount of explosions, and then part of it was like, yeah, get closer, I don't care, boom, and so self-induced dumb stuff because I didn't realize. And so I just imagine the average special operations guy who does, the average, infantry guy who does the same trainings that I did, has put himself through enough that I bet it would show in a 4-year MRI.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about special ops guys. That's just one aspect, right? Like the physical changes in their brain, but then they also have the mental stuff from the stuff that they've seen or the stuff that they've had to do that would take its toll on anybody who didn't have any brain damage at all. And so those things sort of compound on one another. And especially in the special ops groups, there can definitely be some CTE changes that have some pretty pronounced effects on their mood. When they get out.
It's just interesting because the special operations community has a higher percentage of suicides per capita. And that's like, I don't know, obviously it hits near and dear to my heart. So I'm always curious, like, what the hell is it? And I'm always trying to put together, obviously drinking, it doesn't help us. There's we have a big drinking community of how guys heal. Fortunately, I'm obviously sober now, which I'm excited about,
Congrats, man.
But seeing a lot of my other brothers and go through it and not come out the other end the way, we'd all hope. It's just something that I find like it's got to be something that causes like really high end guys to, find that struggle. So this part of my brain is thinking about that. Like there's got to be something to connect that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I had said, are we back?
Yeah, I got you. We're good. If your side fell out, we're good still. Don't worry.
Right. So yes, there's definitely, I think, a link with alcohol. Alcohol, whether you have TBI or not, has a negative impact of your brain. There's many studies out there that have researched people who black out on a regular basis or who drink more than a certain number of drinks on a regular basis, and their incidence of dementia and mood changes compared to somebody who doesn't drink or somebody who drinks very, very little. There's significant differences. So it's not the best thing at all. But yeah, you combine that with like a special forces person who has had many micro brain traumas throughout their career. And they're usually very athletic people who played sports growing up. So they have even a prior history of micro brain injuries,
Yeah.
and the stuff that they have to do and the stuff that they've seen on their operations is just, their brains are probably on fire.
Yeah, it's a lot of the people that are at the Residency Brain Clinic here in Dallas are a lot of special operations guys that I've connected with. And it's crazy to see a lot of guys find a lot of relief from that, from what they do over there. So I'm really excited about you partnering up with them in the study. I'm really excited to see where these studies go.
Yeah.
I've been a fan since I learned about it and been using it myself, as someone who has a diagnosed TBI and back issues. This is why I'm excited about this one. I've done stem cell treatment to help my back. That's how bad it got.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Okay. All right.
So, yeah, man, I'm really excited about it. And I appreciate the opportunity of you coming here and being able to speak.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. Just like you, I use both of them every day. My brain one, I can tell when I don't take it, and then the spine one, I can really tell after like a heavy deadlift day or a clean day when my back would just normally be on fire the next day. I can tell. So I take them both, and I'm not, I'm not just the founder, but I'm also a consumer of it. My anecdotal data I try to use and tell people, but if it doesn't work for you, I'm sorry, but just let us know and we will refund you. That's for all the haters out there, but we are trying to get some useful research out to everybody so that we can show that we are really the top brain supplement in the market and the top spine joint supplement in the market. So
I believe in it.
For letting me get on your awesome podcast. I know you've had a lot of high level people on here, so I feel a little intimidated by that. But yeah.
No, what's important is being able to create a platform that has information that's good for the people listening. A lot of the viewers are veterans and law enforcement. And so I know all those guys go through very similar when it comes to their brain health, and their back health. And so we're providing value for them. So I think this podcast is going to be just as valuable as any other person we've ever invited. So thank you for your time for it. Seriously.
Of course. Yeah. And it just, my brother is just retired Dallas PD. And he takes it too, and he loves it. So, I think we can help a lot of people, and any help that we can get spreading the word through your podcasts or through your followers is much appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks so much, brother.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Later.
All right. Bye.